Robin. How are you doing today? What's been on your radar lately?
Hi. It's been a bit of everything, really. Some quiet, some chaos. But honestly, I've been thinking a lot about boundaries. They've been coming up in small ways, like needing more space in my day or realizing I said yes when I really meant to say no.
No, you do that too. Too real. I think I had a moment like that this week too, where I noticed I fell off and only later realized I'd overridden a boundary. It's so wild how much awareness boundaries actually take, especially when you're someone who's used to bending around other people's needs. Sound familiar?
Oh, yes. And I think that's exactly what we want to talk about today. Boundaries that aren't walls, not rigid shutdowns, but boundaries that make room for connection, for self respect, and for truth.
Yeah, today we're digging into why boundaries are so tricky and absolutely so necessary. We'll explore how to practice them in ways that feel grounded, kind, and honest, especially if it's something you're still learning how to do.
Let's get into it. Okay, let's take a moment to land. If you're listening while doing something else, maybe pause to feel your feet on the ground or bring a little softness to your breath.
This conversation might stir something: tension, insight, even grief. I want you to try to meet what shows up with curiosity. Remember, you get to go at your pace. You don't need to change anything.
When we say boundaries, we're not talking about pushing people away or building walls. We're talking about the space where you end and I begin, essentially. The container that protects connection instead of cutting it off.
Exactly. A good boundary makes more space for relationship, not less. But if you've experienced trauma, especially relational trauma, boundaries can get really tangled. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I even knew what a boundary was until I was probably 32.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely, because I learned that boundaries meant abandonment, I guess, because we didn't have them. I think the idea of setting a limit made us selfish when we were younger. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or, that having a need is a burden. And so you either disappear or you go rigid. Neither of those patterns are your fault. They're adaptations, survival strategies. Your body did what it needed to do to stay safe.
It did. It's magic. And now we get to practice something new. Not perfect, not polished, but honest. So boundaries can sound like, I want to keep talking, but I need a break. Or, I care about you and I'm not available for that right now.
And sometimes they can also sound like silence, a pause, a step back to figure out what you're actually feeling. That counts too.
I like that. I can appreciate that. Often, when we don't set boundaries, we end up building resentment, right? Or we lose ourselves. So, boundaries help us stay in integrity with ourselves and with others. Noticing we're saying this and word, it's two things being true at the same time. So, that might mean honoring your yes and no, even when it feels uncomfortable. And it probably is going to feel uncomfortable, at least while you're starting. It might mean feeling the fear and still staying aligned with what matters most to you.
Right? And they're not something that you owe people an essay about or that you really need to like broadcast.
Right.
They're a form of self respect. And for those of us unlearning that people pleasing or that fawning, they can also be a form of grief, like a signal that we're not willing to self abandon anymore.
Mm, that's
Boundaries,
deep.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Boundaries can also feel hard because many of us have never put ourselves first. And that's not a flaw, it's just something we haven't practiced yet. And like anything new, it takes time. And as you heal, separation from certain people might become necessary. You may start to notice toxic patterns you used to tolerate, patterns that no longer align with the self you're working on reclaiming. And that's not failure, that's growth. It might look like choosing not to reply right away or stepping back from a dynamic that you've outgrown. Small shifts like these are signs of capacity building.
Yeah, I like that. It's not always a bad thing if you've outgrown something. If boundaries are hard for you, here's a gentle practice to try. Because I'm a person too, and I think that has happened before. Setting boundaries just doesn't feel that great, at least
Mhm.
initially, right? It's uncomfortable at first, and just like anything, the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more confident you become. But when something doesn't feel good, or even when it does, pause, ask, what's happening in my body right now? Then ask, what do I need? You don't have to act on it right away. You could jot it down, sit with it, or, even return to it later. But noticing alone starts to build trust with yourself.
Sometimes the first boundary isn't about saying something out loud. It's about recognizing what's happening inside, those internal clues. Uh, this feels too much. Or if you notice yourself bracing, holding your breath, that noticing, that's a boundary too. And that's usually where it starts, with that awareness or giving yourself that permission to feel, and then giving yourself that permission to follow through with a boundary.
Yeah, that's pretty, I think, mind blowing. Just noticing, like, being able to set the boundary first within the self, I think, is where a lot of misstep and disconnect is. And it becomes really difficult to set boundaries outside if you're not plugged into that awareness, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay, it's time for your nervous system nugget. At times, the nervous system can confuse boundaries with danger if limits weren't safe to set growing up. That means your body might interpret no as a threat to your safety, your belonging, or your identity. If you grew up in environments where compliance kept the peace, or where saying no meant rejection or punishment, then boundary setting now may activate a stress response. That racing heart, tight throat, or shutdown, it's your system trying to protect you. It's another version of those early survival strategies showing up in real time, trying to keep you safe in a world that once made boundary setting feel unsafe.
But here's the good news: your nervous system can learn new patterns. Our brain is adaptive. Okay. Building a felt sense of safety takes time and often support. That might look like working with a trauma informed therapist, practicing co regulation with safe people, or simply noticing your internal cues and naming them without judgment. You don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do it all at once. that slow, supported work is real work, and it matters.
If you're looking for support beyond this conversation, we really love the book Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. She's a therapist whose work is deeply affirming and trauma informed, and she offers real life examples and scripts that make boundary setting feel more possible, especially if it's news for you.
I love her posts. She's somebody I like following and often bringing stuff up in session when it's time to educate and be with somebody in that discomfort. So, how about take a moment to think about where you tend to struggle with boundaries? Is it with one person? Across the board? Is it with time, emotions, physical space? There's a lot of different options. So definitely take a moment to check on that and reflect.
And what would it feel like to offer yourself a little bit more space, a little more clarity? Maybe even in just one of those places. Not perfectly, just a little more. Just enough to feel yourself. Or even just noticing what yourself is starting to feel like.
I like that. I think sometimes people have such a disconnect. They're like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you that if someone, shook a stick at it. I'd have no clue. So notice that this is really vulnerable work. And like we always say, it's not about doing it all at once. No black and white thinking, no extreme. It's about noticing, practicing, slow down, offer yourself a little more room to be real.
Next time, we'll explore how healing actually rewires the nervous system. We'll talk about neuroplasticity and how tools like EMDR and our absolute favorite ART, which stands for Accelerated Resolution Therapy, and somatic practices support real change from the inside out. It's going to be a good one.
I actually can't wait.
I know, me too.
So go ahead and remember, everybody, healing isn't linear, and we are here for the ride.
Thanks for sitting with us today. If something resonated, we'd love it if you shared the episode, left a review, or connected with us on social media. We're two therapists walk into a podcast on most platforms. You can listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not therapy, does not replace therapy, and does not establish a therapist-client relationship. If you're in crisis, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional or call 988 in the US. Robin Green is a licensed therapist in Arizona, and Stephanie Edsall is licensed in Utah. And this podcast is intended for a general audience.